Okay. For those that are on live stream, we're going now, and we'll resume this meeting in 2 minutes at 6 o'clock from last week. Good, I see we have all the commissioners. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is a continuation of our Truth and Taxation meeting that was started last week. We have continued the meeting this week because we experienced problems with the United States Postal Service and getting the information mailed out. And so we wanted to make sure that people had all the time to read their material and also follow up maybe with the assessor on those individual questions that I'll keep reinforcing that we encourage you to do if you haven't done so. If you have some questions about your individual assessment, that is a different process than what we do tonight. With that, for our meetings that are held, we will need by statute to read 5 different statements in regards to conducting a meeting where the county board is in attendance, and we have all our commissioners with us tonight that are currently serving. And so I'll read these statements, and that's to justify the virtual or telephone connection that we're having and communicating with the public. Number 1, it has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related peacetime emergency declaration made by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota statutes, Chapter 12. Number 2, we have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting, wherever their physical location, can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony offered at today's meeting. Number 3, we have also ensured that members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion and testimony and all votes, which we will not be doing tonight. They're usually done by roll call. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID pandemic and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting the meeting on Cook County website. Number 4, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have determined that it may be unfeasible for County Auditor Brady Powers, County Attorney Molly Hicken, County Administrator James Yorkie, and members of the Board of Commissioners to be physically present at the county boardroom at the Cook County Courthouse. Number 5, lastly, all votes will be conducted by roll call, and we will not be doing that tonight, but we would in a typical board meeting that requires decisions. We're here to listen tonight, and the Truth and Taxation is something that we definitely feel is very important, and thank you for joining us, and you certainly will have your opportunity to comment. I would like to just give a quick rundown of what the Truth and Taxation process is, and thank you for putting that up. And it's a process first enacted by the legislature in 1988 to enhance public participation in Minnesota's property tax system. The TNT process consists of these three components. Each local government is required to formally adopt a proposed levy in September for the upcoming year. The final levy, when ultimately adopted, may not exceed the proposed levy. Secondly, county auditors generate parcel-specific notices of proposed taxes for all parcels property based on the proposed levies. Hopefully you have received those. If not, contact the auditor's office. Each local government is required to hold a public meeting after the notices come out where budget and tax issues are discussed and where public testimony must be allowed prior to adopting its final levies. Final levies may not exceed proposed levies in the case of levies approved by the voters in referendum elections. The rationale for the program. Prior to TNT, the only involvement most taxpayers had with the property tax system was on the valuation side of the equation. Taxpayers received a market value notice in the spring of the year prior to the tax year, but nothing about how that valuation would actually relate to property taxes. Taxpayers could choose to become involved in tax and budgeting decisions by attending meetings of county commissioners, city councils, and school boards, but few did. TNT was enacted with a goal of improving accountability by focusing taxpayers on the relationship between budget decisions and property taxes, and providing taxpayers with a greater opportunity to become involved in a local government budgeting process. There are some recent changes. In 2009, the legislature made some significant changes to the TNT process, generally aimed at removing some of the requirements that local governments found most onerous. They repealed a requirement that each local government publish a newspaper ad showing proposed levy and spending amounts, and a number of regulations related to scheduling of the public meetings, which had required an extensive administrative process that ensured that no two hearings affecting the same taxpayer would ever be held simultaneously. The pre-2009 law also required that the final levy would be adopted at the TNT hearing, and we will adopt our final levy at the next board meeting, which is on December 22nd. Thank you. So tonight, this is a chance for public comment, but before we do that, we're going to have a presentation by our auditor, Brady Powers, as well as a short one from our assessor, Bob Thompson. And during this part of the meeting, I just want to state that everyone will be on mute, so we don't have any interruptions in the discussion. April Zimmer is helping tonight, and she will unmute people when there's time for questions for Auditor Powers, and he will let us know when he's ready for that. After that, then we'll be opening it up for comments, and I will go by a roll call by all the people that I see on the screen. And I'll also ask our county administrator if anything's been received by email or by letter. Okay, with that, I turn it over to Auditor Powers for his presentation. Thank you for all the work that you and your department has done, Brady, in preparing this information and all the work that you do for the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll share my screen. Okay, so this is the 2021 budget Truth and Taxation meeting. When I finish, please ask any questions regarding the slides, anything you would like clarified. And of course, you can, if you don't want to do it at that time, you can call me anytime. Email is good too. The first page here just lists what's on each of the slides. The next page, titled Purpose of Truth and Taxation Meeting, is redundant with a lot of what Myron said. I'll just briefly go over it. Requires the county to hold the public meeting, require the proposed budget and levy, allow the public time to speak, requires the treasurer deliver the notice of proposed taxes, and it contains the amount of taxes by each taxing authority that plans to collect the following year. Taxing authorities in Cook County include the school, the hospital, city, 3 towns, Economic Development Authority, Arrowhead Regional Development Commission, and the state of Minnesota. Almost 50% of property taxes collected in Cook County are for taxing entities other than Cook County. Now, we all know that there are disadvantages of the property tax system. It's a very complex system. There are unfunded mandates, meaning a lot of laws, federal and state. They put a lot of requirements on us in various ways, reporting, etc. And they're not funded completely. And the taxes may not match the ability to pay. But there are also advantages, such as being more responsive and accountable to the public than other taxes, and such as this meeting, and more stable for local government functioning than perhaps a sales tax would be. Also note, there are meetings in the spring of each year called the Board of Review and Equalization meetings for the county to review with taxpayers the value and classification of their properties. So the meetings held in the spring of 2021 will review values for taxes payable 2022. The next screen just points out a couple of things you might not be aware of, or things just to note. When you look at your statement, always take a look and see, did your value change? It can have a dramatic effect on the taxes you pay. And did your classification change? In this case, the value went down about $10,000, which you'll see at the bottom has an effect. The class did not change in this case, seasonal property. Dropping down to the body of the statement, you'll see Cook County, and that's where the county taxes are. And what you'll see, you may not be aware, well, you wouldn't be aware, that in any place other than the city and the 3 towns, there are fire districts, and those fire districts show up on this line under Cook County, and they're different. Maple Hill has a little different rate from Gunflint Trail or Colville or Hovland. They can be 2 or 3% different. So just be aware of that. Dropping below that, you see something called state general tax. That only applies to commercial and seasonal properties. There's a dollar amount here because this is a seasonal property. So a homestead would still have that title, but there wouldn't be any tax there. Below that, you'll see the taxes for the school district. They have referendum taxes, voter approved, and then they have other local levies that they can levy. And finally, below that, you see other special taxing districts. What's included there, in our case, is the hospital, Economic Development Authority, and Arrowhead Regional Development Commission. The hospital is by far the largest levy of those 3 entities. In some places, there may be a dozen different special taxing districts. The next page shows the county's proposed budget and levy that we approved on September 22nd. If you look down the left, you'll see the funds that the county uses, the general fund that has the sheriff and the auditor and the attorney, et cetera, the highway department, human services, airport, building, bonds, capital reserve. Across the top, you'll see our expenses proposed for 2021, our revenues proposed, our use of fund balance proposed, and our initial levy in each of those funds. And next to that, last year, or this year actually, 2020 final levy as a comparison, and then the dollar increase compared to the 2020 levy, and then a percentage increase. So down at the bottom of that 2021 levy, you see $10,798,575. That's the county's proposed levy. Last year's, or this year, I should say, his final levy was $10,367,293. So it's a $431,000 increase in the proposed levy, which is next to that about 4.16% increase. And point out one last thing. On the left side, the bottom line, there's a number there for contingency, 391,600. That's there because we're negotiating with all of our unions right now. We don't have a good number to peg to have an estimated payroll. So we put in what we thought would cover what we might negotiate, and then any other changes that might have occurred between September 22nd and when the county approves its final levy. One of the interesting things this year is you'll see this reduced impact due to valuation. This is the second year in a row that we've had a fairly large increase in the overall county valuation. So that's due to continued economic growth in Cook County, and this year some classification changes to property classes, including vacant land and vacation rental properties. So we had a total of about a 5.1% increase in the overall tax base for 2021. The fact that that increase in the tax base is larger than the proposed increase in the property tax levy means that for properties that aren't affected by classification or valuation changes, there may be a slight decrease in the county portion of the property tax, even at that 4.16% proposed increase. So there's a chart on the next page, and right down here, as it says, it looks like about an $8 decrease for a $2,000 homestead with no change in valuation or classification. So here is the chart, which you see the adopted 2020 levy and tax rate, and the 2021, you actually see the tax rate. So what this shows is that even though there was the $431,000 proposed increase, the tax rate went down a little bit because the value went up so much, from 59 to 58%. So what that means is when you compare, you're just comparing three properties here at $100,000, $200,000, and $400,000 value. Each one is estimated to go down about 0.7%, just a few dollars, but it's a decrease, even though we have that increase in the proposed levy. So what are the major considerations for the board in setting the levy this year, besides those contract negotiations? Number one is what's called the Ty-Blatnick law. It's an every 10-year federal appraisal of our boundary water lands. In 2019, that appraisal came back lower than it had been, significantly lower, and would have given us a reduction of about $752,000 a year. Now, the assessors from the three counties, Lake, St. Louis, and Cook, that are all the boundary water counties in the state, they knew that this was not really reflecting the reality that we understand for how that land might be used if it wasn't owned by the feds and in the boundary waters. And the federal government was, they did acquiesce and decided to do a reappraisal. So we're waiting right now for that reappraisal to come in, which should happen by the end of 2021. The state's most recent budget forecast here says a $2.47 billion deficit. Well, we have since I did this PowerPoint, we have since gotten the latest report from the state, and that deficit now is about a 641,000 positive number in the current biennium. So that is great news. It doesn't eliminate this as a source of consideration. The out biennium 2 years later is still showing about a $1.2 billion deficit. And these change. This has been a major change since the one a few months ago, and it could change again. The next reappraisal of this is in February this year, and given all the discussion we've heard about the COVID and what may happen after Thanksgiving and what may happen with the holidays upcoming, that could change again. So we're going to keep a close eye on it, but for now, it's a lesser impact. The third major consideration has been the property taxpayer. The collections have been quite strong for 2020 in spite of the pandemic. Some of the reports are that federal aid in the form of grants and loans and an unexpectedly good tourist season have helped individuals and businesses in 2020, and they've made those payments. But federal loan repayments start soon, and many forms of this aid have ended. Without federal support, the winter could be difficult for individuals and businesses and right into the spring. So the county board continues to monitor this situation, trying to weigh its impact as it finalizes the budget and levy. We may not have time. We'll have to set this probably before we know Congress is debating, and the two sides are not agreeing, and one side would give additional funds to state, county, city, and the other would not, and that could affect, if we knew that, our levy considerations. So the next chart is all levies history. So this goes back to all of the entities that we collect levies for, the city, the towns, the school, etc. Across on the left side, and then across the top, you'll see way over on the right, the 2021 proposed, the 2020, the 2019 levy. And then I like to include 2001 and 2002 just as an example of some major changes when the legislature makes law changes, how it can affect it. So back in 2001, the school levy was almost equal to the county. They were both $3 million levies. With that law change, the school local levy dropped to $279,000, and they instituted the state general property tax, and you see that at about $2.1 million. But since that time, you can see the local school levy went up about $1.5 million to 1.8, 1.7 million, but the state general property tax has stayed stagnant. In fact, it's just a little bit less than it was when it was started in 2002. The next page just puts what you saw into a pie chart. So combining some of the categories, you see the county is this year at 57% of all the levies. And then you see the state general tax fiscal disparity is about 15%, the schools about 9%, those special taxing districts, hospital, EDA, about 9%, and the cities and towns, fire districts are about 10%. The next page, I like to keep track of how our budgeted expenditures, revenues, our certified levy, and our fund balance, how those vary from year to year and over time. This is a very shortened version, all the years in between, just for presentation purposes. This just jumps from 1989 to 2019 and then gives you the average of all those years. And the reason I quit at 2019 is because that's when we get our certified fund balance in our audit. So that's our most recent. So here you can see budgeted expenditures up 3.25 times over that 30-year period. And this one jumps the most because of the highway department, large projects that can jump up or down 5, 6 million, depending on the projects that they have from year to year. It doesn't affect the levy that much because most of their projects are funded by state and federal revenue, gas tax. The budgeted revenues are up about 333% over that same time period. The certified levy, a little bit higher, about 3.58% over that time period. And that I attribute, at least during my time here, in seeing that the funds, particularly that the state gives to counties, the portion that they give to counties for levy reduction has lessened as a percentage. They give us more targeted aid to special programs, but less of this unrestricted aid. And then on Finally, the unreserved fund balance you see at 391% over those 30 years, and that's taken a really strong jump in the last couple of years, and which is really good news. It's good news for our bonding. We just did a rebonding of our sales tax bonds, got excellent rating, and we'll save a couple of million on those bonds, partly because of the rating that we have with the rating agencies, and they rely heavily with small counties on that fund balance. But that's really only part of it. The other major part of that fund balance is for emergencies. We used it extensively after the Great Recession in 2009, 8, and 9. And we may need it again if the Ty Blatnick payment, for example, came back as low as it was on the first appraisal. We would be glad we had that. The last screen I have is just showing, again, since valuation is such a big part of the taxes you see this year, this is showing a little bit of the shift in taxation by classification. So on the left-hand side, you see the property class, homestead, seasonal properties, non-homestead, residential, resorts, commercial, etc. Across the top, you see comparisons of 2020 and 2021. The first one are the counts, how many properties in each of those categories, then the taxable values year to year, then the net tax year to year, and then the percentage of the tax paid by each of those classes. And I just highlight in red where you see the big changes this year as compared to last year, and that's in the seasonal rec residential, the non-homestead residential, and the commercial. And that's where the assessor had to make some changes based upon state law, Department of Revenue recommendations, strong recommendations, I should say. And so you see the move away from the non-homestead residential by over 500 properties, and they move back into seasonal residential and into commercial primarily. And the effect of that is that the percentage of taxes, you can see by seasonal, has jumped back up from 34 to 38%. The non-homestead residential dropped to 13% of the taxes being paid by that class, and commercial is up from 9 to 14%. And it's primarily the properties that were switched from non-homestead to commercial that we're hearing from, because that's a significant change in taxation, which unfortunately there's a law the assessor will probably speak about that will make that change largely in reverse again for the following year, but it came too late this year to make that change for 2021. And that concludes my presentation. And I'd ask if there are any questions regarding these slides before we go back to the board chair and for your comments.
Okay. Thank you, Brady.
Thank you.
Now go to our assessor for a presentation about assessment information and the assessment process.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and everybody who's present tonight. I have a real brief, more of a discussion of the timeline of the assessment calendar. So basically, everybody should be aware, anybody who's contacted me, I do see that there's a couple in the list that I've spoken with in the last, couple of weeks. Anything that we would be looking at, we're more than willing to look at your valuation and your classification, but we'll be looking at the next year's assessment as far as what we could make changes on at this point. So I'm going to pull up the assessment calendar that I have available, and I'll walk you through that. And then, afterwards, I'll kind of touch base on some of the commercial classification changes that were made, because I do see some people in the room there. So here on the screen, you see the timeline for property taxes payable in 2021 for the estimated tax statement or the proposed tax statement that you just recently received. You can see that where we're at in the timeline is where the red X lies. So shortly after that estimated tax notice goes out, then we hold this truth and taxation meeting. You can see that the taxes that result from the 2020 valuation, it's set back on January 2nd of 2020. Then in March, we finalize our assessment, we send it off to the printers and they mail those notices out with the tax statements in April. Sometimes late March, early April. Then you have the local board of appeals in any of the organized townships in the West End, or you have the county board of appeals. And also we do an informal appeal process leading up to the county board of appeals in June. So essentially the very last opportunity that the county level has to make changes for anything short of an error that was made, that would be like clerical in nature, if you transposed a number or misplaced a decimal or something along those lines, something that didn't follow the policy, you can't make a change on these after the county board of appeals adjourns. For example, one that we have made a change on in the last couple of weeks is one that it didn't follow our policy. For some reason, the document got put into a folder and it didn't get updated into the list. So that property didn't follow the policy that we laid out, where the first property in the sequence would be considered the cabin if there was personal use. And the second property in the sequence of ownership would be considered an investment, because it would have been, a rental property purchased in addition to the cabin. And that was kind of the policy that I had developed after consulting with other county assessors and the county attorney. So that's where we're at as far as this assessment calendar. These obviously are for taxes 2021 based on that value back on January 2020. You can see that the sales that go into those studies where we made some of the changes, in case there are people who do have some valuation concerns, we're looking at the sales that occurred in late 2018, early or all the way into September, October 2019. So there's a number of people that I have spoken with and replied to on valuation and classification issues. And certainly if I haven't spoke to any of you, you can reach out via the email or my phone number. And I'll give the phone number now in case anybody wants to give a call tomorrow or later in the week. It is 218-387-3650. The email is assessor@co.cook.mn.us, and both of those are available on our county website. The last thing I'm going to share here before I turn back to the board chair is the memo that was issued, just because I do know that there have been a lot of the questions as far as why these commercial changes had been made. So you can see the date of this memo is May 21st, 2019. This had been after a number of counties had approached the Department of Revenue about classifying vacation rental properties because they were proliferating throughout the state, especially in an area like Cook County where tourism is high. This is the memo that was issued. It created a question around the resort properties. I know many of these resorts have existed for many years. And we had asked about how to proceed on a unit like that, where it is owned privately and rented out on a short-term basis, whether it be through an advertising website or through a resort management company. And the response was that those should be treated the same way, that basically any property that is determined to be primarily used as a short-term rental or a transient lodging, overnight stays, anything less than 30 days of a lease, then that should be classified as 3A commercial. You can see here that if that's the primary use, that's the appropriate classification. Now, since this, with a resolution that was adopted by the Cook County Board and a lot of effort by the Cook County EDA and some of the business members of the community, they had pushed down in St. Paul for a change to this, the directive that was issued. And at this point, they have adopted they've basically defined the use to be a residential non-homestead, which is actually the use, the classification that we had put on the properties back in 2019 after, you know, doing an extensive report and extensive research, that was the classification that the previous assessor had landed on as being the appropriate one. And now it looks like moving forward for starting assessment year 2021, that any property used primarily as a 1 to 3 unit short-term rental would be classified as a residential non-homestead now. And I think, you know, I think that pretty much covers this portion of it. Like I said, if anybody has questions related to that valuation or classification, if I haven't already addressed it, or if we're not, you know, currently in the process of working on addressing that, certainly reach out to my office and let me know what you've got going on.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. With that, we'll go into the public comment period. I'm going to call on James Yorkie to see if you've received any emails or letters in regards to public comment, and you could read those at this time if you have them.
Mr. Chairman, I was contacted by one constituent whose concern related to a change in his property's valuation. I explained that the increase in his tax bill was related to valuation and was unrelated to the levy. And I believe Mr. Thompson also spoke to him. So no comments about the levy itself.
Okay, thank you. Well, I will be doing a roll call, and I know that some of you may or may not want to comment, but I'm just going to go through the list on who I think are not staff. And but I think I'll just make sure that everyone has the opportunity to comment. You can decline or pass. And when I invite you to speak, you can unmute your microphone. And I don't see any that are on phone, but if you do, you can press 6 on your phone. Please state your name, address, and the commission district. And then I think you can just go ahead. You don't have to be recognized. I'll call on you. You can pass, or you can state your comment. Issues should not be debated during the comment period. That means the commissioners we're here to listen. We're not here to dialogue and debate issues with you. We want your individual comments. And please direct your comments to the Board of Commissioners or presenters as you've done. And please note that it's focused on the levy, the proposed levy, and not on individual property assessments. And if I hear you speak and ask questions about the property assessments to your specific property, I'm going to ask you to follow up with our assessor, Bob Thompson, on that. And please be civil. And I don't think we need to even worry about a time limit, looking at the number of people that are joining us tonight. And we really want to hear from you and appreciate your thoughts, and we'll take them into consideration. And then at the end, I will ask if any commissioners would like to comment, but we're not making a decision tonight or getting into any kind of debate or discussion. With that, I will go to Stacy Hawkins. Any comment, or you're here maybe a staff? No, you're not at staff now.
No, I'm not a staff, but no comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, Robert Solison, Bob, any comments?
Thank you, Chairman Bershheim. No comments tonight.
Okay, thank you. Go to Ann Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just here observing this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Next, John Jacobson.
No questions at this time. I know I need to follow up with Bob.
Okay, thank you. Pat, any comments that you have, Pat Eliason?
No comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Connie McColajak. I hope I pronounced that close. Connie? Connie is muted, so I assume she's not speaking. Mike Carlson? Mike Carlson, any comments?
No comments.
Okay, thank you. One last call to Connie. Didn't hear a response. Okay. That's all I have on my directory. April, are you aware of any that I missed?
Did you call on Mr. Joel Button?
I didn't see that one. I'm sorry, I missed it. That is the J. I saw it earlier.
Yeah. Hey, this is Joel. I appreciate your.
Okay, I don't see you on mine. Sorry.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So I have a question for Bob, but I have to say this. I'm a homeowner. I have a number of properties up there that we rent through Cascade Vacation. We've been going to the North Shore for decades and decided that we would make the North Shore the focus of our vacation so that our children would build memories and that they and their families would go up. We love the North Shore. I'm upset at the classifications, but I have to let everyone know that I've phoned Bob, and all my interactions with Bob are phenomenal. I really appreciate Bob's communication, and Mike Larson told me to give Bob a call and said that it would be great, and it proved to be just that. So Bob, for as much as I disagree with you, I really appreciate the way you've dealt with me. That goes a long way, and I can't say enough about how much I appreciate that. Okay, yes, thumbs up. And if I had my video here, you'd see my thumbs up. And we're driving up tomorrow, so if you happen to be in the office, let me know and I'll stop by and say hi. I do have a question for you, and it's going to be kind of the focus of where I go with all this. Well, one of the focus. So I'm kind of curious, and I should have asked you the other day. In the 2019 memo, do you feel that you have discretion to interpret that? Because as I read it, I don't see it as a directive, but maybe past memos you have discovered that they actually were directives. So how do you deal with a memo like that doesn't look like it's telling you exactly what to do? It's just giving guidance.
Mr. Chair, this comment isn't about the levy.
I would like to comment.
Okay.
I would prefer that you talk to him about this. This is about the levy and the budget.
Okay, great. No,
so
I don't
follow up with him. But if you have any comments about the budget process, the budget information presented tonight, and how the tax situation goes pertaining to the levy, please do so at this time.
No, thanks for clarifying, and I don't. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. I do see Alan that I missed. He's popped up. I don't see the whole name. Shauna C. Maybe. Alan, would you want to comment?
I just joined in right now, so I didn't realize this was going on. I just got a link, so I'm just listening in.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Okay, one last call for anyone that would like to comment as part of the public comment period on the levy. With that, then I'll ask if any commissioners would like to comment at this time about what they've heard the last 2 weeks or any thoughts that they may have. And of course, this will be on the agenda for the 22nd. We do need to make a decision at that time. So if a commissioner would like to speak, a comment, please just state your name and go ahead.
And sent to jail. Her 1-year-old daughter was taken into state custody. This was right before
I'm not hearing any commissioners. Okay.
Dave went off of mute. Let Dave go first.
I was debating whether or not to use my phone or try to use the interwebs here, but I'll try the interwebs. So I just wanted to acknowledge the concerns of Tribal Chair DeShaw talking about remembering the people with the greater needs of the county, and I want to recognize that and just recognize our staff's work at especially during this pandemic. I also want to recognize the work that Assessor Thompson touched on regarding navigating this tax classification issue. It's very sensitive and difficult, and I think Mr. Button's comments expressed the frustration there, to say the least. But I'm very proud of how we as a team approached that and dealt with it, and worked with partners at the state as well, and just really grateful for our representation at the state too. In the next year, we're going to be seeing a vaccine coming for COVID, and it's going to take a while to get through all the systems. Am I still, can you still, okay. If someone could just keep moving, that way I know. Yeah, thanks, Heidi. And so there's a lot of uncertainty there, and we had quite a scare with that state deficit, and I feel quite a bit of relief knowing that that's not the picture, that original deficit forecast is not the picture that we're working with now. But Brady points out that changes, and that's a moving thing. So we just need to, be cautious, be prudent, and keep in mind that one of the best tools we have without the vaccine, or even with the vaccine, is our contact tracers. And those are county staff and county volunteers. But we need to be prepared to fund those positions, because the positivity rates in Cook County are about half. They're the lowest in the state, but they're about half to the next lowest in the state. And so we're doing a phenomenal job as a community and as a county, and we need to really stay invested in ourselves. So we set our preliminary budget. I'm on the edge of my seat to see where things go up until our last meeting here. But I really feel like we need to stay on our toes and be prepared for all the uncertainties in the upcoming year. So that was all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mills. Any other commissioner would like to speak at this time? Please state your name.
Commissioner Dukirk.
Okay.
Clearly been sitting next to Commissioner Mills for too long in our terms, because he said everything I wanted to say. So this will be shorter for those of you that are tired of listening to us commissioners talk with all our hot air. And you're right, Dave, you hit on the main points. And even though this isn't a meeting about the classification and it's about the levy, the Vacation Rental Committee was created 7 years ago to address a lot of things, but the classification of them is one of them. And the fact that it had to go to a state level to get done, and it was more or less taken out of our hands, but they look to us for guidance because we have the most per population or per capita here, says a lot. So thank you, Bob. And Mr. Buttons, I hope you get a chance to talk to Bob again, because yes, he is wonderful. It's crazy that we're sitting here during a pandemic and have our tax base increase higher than our levy. That puts us in a good place. And our tax base does fluctuate. When you look at Brady putting up the last 30 years with an average increase of 3.58, this is exactly what our financial guidance, Eilers and Associates, have told us. They gave us a 10-year prediction. They told us to pay our bonds, that we needed to stay at an increase of 3.5 every year. Yes, I 100% respect Bobby's opinions on keeping it low and making sure that people are not harmed by our choices. And we've always had someone on our board speaking for that population since the day I was elected. We've always had a voice speaking for those that are on fixed incomes, is the nicest way to say it. But we need to provide services, and we need to be prepared for continuing to provide information on COVID. And so $391,600 looks like a huge contingency for staffing. And it really looks like we're going to be irresponsible again and give our staff huge raises. But that's not, I don't believe that that's the intent of this board or future boards, is to do that. We are always trying to be incredibly responsible with the taxpayers' dollars, because we also pay taxes and it also impacts us. And so I know we haven't decided, and I know all of us, as Dave said, are on the edge of our seats trying to figure out what's the best thing to do and not put the county in harm's way. We were told 4 to 6, get yourself out of the hole, turn things around. We did. We turned things around. As we can see by the number of people present, we no longer have 100 people coming to our meetings to tell us we're horrible. I can't go below 3.5. Y'all can send me messages before the board makes its final decision. I can't go below 3.5 because I know that 3.58 is what we need to stay the course. So, you know, I don't expect any of the other commissioners to say where you're at. That's not what this is about. This is just us letting you all know that we've done our homework. We know what we're supposed to do. We know what our tasks are, and we're listening to you, and we know that it's hard. It's never an easy thing to do. Even when we have small populations of people at our meeting or a low number of people talking, it's never, ever an easy thing, because this is about community and what we provide to the community. And I can't even begin to tell you what it's like to leave after 8 years and finally know that the county is okay and that the people that we have are being served, and that we don't have homeless people living on the street in huge numbers. There are couch surfers. There are people that don't have their own roof over their head. And we don't often see them and don't realize we have them, but we have them in Cook County. We have people that are homeless. And we're able to provide for people. We're able to help people out during COVID. We have Ruby's Pantry in the community. We now have housing for people that could have never imagined having housing before. When you look at the EDA in 2001, having a budget of 100,000 and now having over 300,000, that and more goes back into the community to give back to it, to increase businesses and to build community. And I know there's a lot of work ahead. And I'm sorry I said this was going to be short, but this is my last meeting, so y'all gotta listen to me. You guys did amazing work. The staff did amazing work, and it's never easy. So thank you all. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Commissioner DeKirk. Commissioner Starley. You're on mute, Commissioner Starley.
There? Is that unmuted?
Yes, now you're on.
I have to get my little mouse going here. Well, these two evenings, which is normally one evening, they're very important to commissioners, to myself, because the true fact of how we set a levy is based on how we feel at the time of there again, the people in our community. And I agree with Commissioner Dukirk that we try to take care of all of the people in our county. Sometimes it's hard because circumstances, as we're in right now, the pandemic has affected everybody, whether you're in a business, whether you're retired, whether you're working from home or whatever. So over the next 2 weeks, I'm hoping to add more data and information to my budget list. And hopefully we, as a group of commissioners with the guidance of Brady and our administrator, can help us do the right thing for setting the levy for 21. It's never easy, and but I think in all reference to Commissioner Mills and talking about where our state is coming down to right now is encouraging. We take all that into consideration, and that's what we use to set the permanent levy in 2 weeks. So thank all of you for attending, and appreciate your opinions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Starley? Well, I'll comment briefly. I've been on the budget committee my whole 4 years. I would like to remind, and if people don't know, I voted against the preliminary levy of 4.16. And at that time, I stated my reasons were based upon my past experiences in working with budgets. And we've worked hard to, and we've done a great job with our fiscal management. And we've built up a fund balance that is very healthy. And the reason we build up fund balances, we sort of have a policy, we will not go below 75% of our operating expenses. And we're at over 90%. And so from my experience, I think that when you get into hard times, you do need to look at, the services that we provide. But also in hard times, you build up budget reserves so that you can go in and use them on a temporary basis, not as long-term or not as a practice. And so that's why I did not vote for the 4.16. That being said, things are looking better. I'm no longer going to be serving. And I think that for the two commissioners that are continuing, I really want to listen to you because you're going to be the ones living with it. And I wouldn't want to come in and say, this is the way it should be. I think we're in a situation where, and again, I reinforce that the reason we built up a very healthy balance in our reserve is to weather some of these times and to help out the taxpayers because it's their money too. And I'm not an anti-tax person at all, but I think sometimes in tough times, you got to look at what you can do and but make sure that you're sustainable and provide the services that we are. And I think we could do that with less than 4.16. That's basically all I have to say. Any commissioner comments further? And then I think we'll do a last call for anyone that's come on. I've seen a couple of people that have come on. Any other comments from the commissioners? Any last comment from anyone that I've seen a couple of people come on that I hadn't seen before? Last call for public comment from our constituents. With that then, thanks again for everyone, staff, the other commissioners for all your work. We've had a good meeting, and I think this will conclude our Truth and Taxation for 2020. And thanks for all again, and have a good rest of the evening.